What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So today we have a lot of work ahead of us. We got this stand done about a month and a half ago or so, and it's been running great. We have a few little adjustments to do to it, but not too much. For the most part, we really like the design of this rack. So now what we need to do is about right here. We need to design another rack, one side facing out and one side facing in. So there's essentially going to be 3 walls of tanks. This rack right here is going to be all of our bigger tanks. So the ones that are like our 40 breeders or our 60 gallon. We're also going to be doing on the bottom of these racks, we're going to be doing some 75 gallon grow outs, because if we're planning on having things like angelfish or discus in the future, we need more space for them to grow out and comfortably, grow. So we're going to be doing some bigger tanks on the bottom and probably doing some blackworm colonies on the top. We've spent so long planning the blueprints, the design, the measurements, everything for this new rack. Now that we have this one done and we know how to build it, essentially, this one should be a lot faster, even though it's going to be more work, more wood. It's just going to be more work. But we already know what to do. So even though it's more work, it should be faster. And now that the snow has melted out here, and I want to get rid of all of this. This is all just in the way up against the garage door. I can't open the garage door. So before we go outside, we're going to be taking all of that spare lumber and we're just going to be piling it up here, basically playing Tetris in the garage again this weekend and moving stuff around. And once we get the rack set up, then we'll have a more permanent spot for that. We're actually going to be using some of that wood, actually, so that'll help get some of that away. But anyway, so we go out here. All of the snow is now melted. Well, I shouldn't say all of it. Most of it's now melted, and we can actually work outside. It feels great. So what we've done is we've already gone to Lowe's, and we have so much lumber. We have 20 8-foot 2x6s and another 29 10-foot 2x4s. So what we're going to do to try to save time a little bit later is we're going to be spending the rest of the day today, probably maybe like 2 or 3 hours, and we're just going to sand every surface of every board, all 4 sides, and we're going to make sure that these are all smooth. We're just going to go straight at 220 grit, and we're going to make sure that they're pretty smooth, so that way when we get to the assembled stage, right before we go to paint on the polyacrylic, everything will be pretty much already sanded except for the areas that we actually do the cutting on. So that should save a lot of time down the road. So we're going to spend the time now to have an easier time sanding, so that way we don't have to do it later. So we're going to jump into the actual blueprints, the design. If you want to see that, awesome. If you don't, go ahead and skip forward and we will get to the actual build itself. So let's get into it. Okay, so that took a lot longer than I thought it was going to take. We just finished sanding 29 10-foot 2x4s, completely every single surface with the exception of the ends, because we're going to just cut those off. Every single surface, every single deformity, every knot in the wood, every splinter in the wood, and they truly needed it, because I got a lot of splinters just taking these things off of the rack at Lowe's and then moving them around. My hands are completely raw over the last couple days. I need to put lotion on my hands just because of how many little tiny splinters I got and how raw this wood was. We still have 20 2x6s that we need to sand, but it is getting really late today. It's already past 8:30 at night. The sun is still really high up in the air because we live in Alaska in the north, and it's springtime, which means the sun is setting later and later every single day, almost to the point where midsummer we really don't see nighttime at all. There's this sun all the way through the night, except for maybe 2 hours where it's sunset. However, even though it's still sunny outside, I can still be working. I still have to be respectful to my neighbors, so I'm not going to be sanding this late at night, so that way they can get some sleep, I can get some sleep. I'm exhausted. This is taking me far too long already. I thought this entire pile was going to take 2 or 3 hours, and I'm already 4 hours in and only got half of the pile essentially. Like I said, I have the 2x6s left, so they are 2 inches wider than the 2x4s, but they're 2 feet less because these are only 8-foot boards. Those are 10-foot boards. So hopefully 29 of these and 20 of those, it's like 60% done, 40% what's left. So we'll see. I expect that I have probably another 3 or 4 hours after knowing how long these took. I expect 3 or 4 more hours on this pile, and then after that we can start chopping and whatnot. We already have all of our measurements planned out, so we don't need to sit there and remeasure everything. We can honestly just take the boards and start chopping. Some of the boards did have some knots in them, so all the boards that had little knots in them, they're going to lose a little bit of their load-bearing strength in that area. So those boards specifically, I am not going to make part of my horizontals. Those ones will most likely just be supports and smaller pieces, because I don't want a long piece with a knot in it to give it a little less weight that it can bear. Not as sturdy and not as strong. So yeah, tomorrow we'll finish sanding everything, and then we'll start chopping. And yeah, it's nice to be able to do this outside, because now I'm not going to there's my daughter. Now I'm not going to have to get sawdust all over my garage, so I should save time in this project by not having to clean up all the sawdust. But yeah, this is going to be a lot of work, but I'm going to turn in for tonight. We'll pick this back up tomorrow, and we'll go from there. Alrighty, the sun is nice and high up. It is middle of the day, right after lunchtime. I didn't really feel like doing anything in the morning, so yeah, we ate some breakfast, took the dogs on a walk, kind of sat around the house a little bit, relaxed, ate some lunch, and now I can't really justify putting it off any longer. Let's go ahead and get the rest of these boards sanded. Like I said, it should take probably 3 or 4 hours, I would assume, based on how long those took. And then after we're done sanding, it's time to double check our blueprints, organize the boards by which ones have knots in them, the little holes and stuff, and which ones don't, so we know which ones are going to be our horizontals, our supports, etc., etc. And we will start chopping. Let's get to it. There she is. The pile is all done, 100% completely sanded. So now there's only like a 1% chance I'll get a splinter as I'm touching things, and that's much better than like a 95% chance to get a splinter, because when I was getting these boards off of the shelves at Lowe's and I was putting them in my truck, taking them out of the truck to put them next to the garage right there, and then handling them today and yesterday, I've gotten so many splinters and I got so many tiny little cuts on my hands that my hands are kind of hurting a little bit. But having these all be sanded, this is going to eliminate that step in the future to do a full sanding when the racks are together. Because if you watched my previous build on my 20-gallon wall, we had to do a little bit of sanding after the rack had already been together, and that caused a lot more time consumption sanding all of that, because I had to go through every single nook and cranny, every 90-degree turn, every corner. It was a pain in the butt. So having sanded all of the boards, the only thing that's going to essentially become unsanded are the parts where I'm cutting it, which that's going to be easy to take care of later. Plus, once we get it all assembled and we coat it with polyacrylic, any little tiny deformities, any knots in the wood, anything that's still just a little bit sharp, those will all get kind of condensed down by the polyacrylic. So I'm satisfied with the work we did. I thought we would at least start the cutting. All of the 2x4s are just simple miter saw cuts. Those ones are going to be easy once we measure them out. These 2x6s though, these are going to be the dado cuts. So we have 20 boards, 3 dado cuts each. We're going to need to do 60 dado cuts, and a dado cut takes a couple minutes each. So honestly, these 2x6s, I can already anticipate taking an entire day, and depending on how I feel during that day, it might even take 2, because I thought I could sand in one day and it ended up taking 2, and it's coming to about 6 o'clock right now, so I could keep going for a little while longer. However, I kind of don't want to. I'm not really feeling it anymore. My back hurts, my hands hurt. I think I might take a shower and turn in for the night, and then get an early's jump on it tomorrow. Before I do any kind of cutting, I need to consult my blueprints, and I need to come out here with a pencil and a tape measure and start marking all of the boards and start planning all of the cuts. So even if we wanted to, we can't really start cutting today. So is what it is. We're gonna turn in and we'll tackle this tomorrow. It is the next day, and it is an absolutely beautiful morning. We got the saws out. Again, I didn't want to do it last night just because I was getting pretty tired. There's only a few hours of working time left in the day before, you know, you should be considerate to your neighbors. And I didn't want to pull the saws out just to put the saws back inside the garage. So here we are, 10 a.m. next morning. We got the saws. First, we need to get a pencil and a tape measure and start lining out everything that we are going to be cutting. Like I said before, the 2x4s, those are just going to be simple cuts, dimensional lumber, cut them to size. The 2x6s, however, are probably going to take all day long because we have to cut 3 dado insertions on each one of them, 3 dado cuts on each one, for a total of 60 because there's 20 boards here. So that's probably going to be an all-day endeavor, but we won't know until we get into it and we start getting after it. The only plans that I have for today, obviously, is this, and we might go to lunch. Apparently there's going to be a food truck a couple blocks away, and we might go to that for lunch. Who knows? But until then, let's get all the saws and stuff set up. Let's get these lumber pieces. We'll figure out which ones are the straightest ones, which ones have the holes and the knots and the deformities in them, and we'll figure out which piece is going to become which piece, and then we'll measure it all out. But we'll get the sawhorses up and start penciling it all off. Okay, that has been a long last couple hours. I mean, in reality, it actually went by pretty quick because we already had everything penciled out and it was just a matter of basically just chopping and going. So I still got a couple hours left in the day today, but I think I am going to do some light sanding with some hand sanding sponges. These little things over here. These little sanding sponges. Just do some light sanding on all of the like little splinters and stuff that came off during the cutting process, and then I think I'm going to call it a day after that because doing all the work on the floor here is kind of a pain in the butt. Kind of hurts your back a little bit, but we got everything cut out. I really like the progress that we have on it so far. The only other thing left to cut is the dados, which we do have them penciled off on where the dados are going to go. We just haven't cut the dados yet. Like I said before, it's probably going to be an all-day process. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a little bit after work throughout the next week because today is Sunday. And hopefully by next weekend, we'll be able to start assembling them all and get going. But if I can do just a couple of boards of dados each day after work, that should be plenty to last until Friday. But it's nice because we have our 4-foot rack dados right here, our 3-foot rack dados right here. We have our 103.5-inch segments for our 4-foots, our 40-foot segments, or sorry, 40-inch segments for our 3-foot tank. All of the middle pieces, the 16.5-inch middle pieces, and then right here is our 8-inch connecting pieces. That way we can basically joint all of the racks together to make one giant sturdy structure. once it's all jointed together, even without tanks and stuff on it, it is going to be very heavy. I'm gonna need 2, maybe even 3 people to lift it once it's all together. But very happy to have everything at least cut out, of course with the exception of the dados, and I can't wait for this to be put together. But yeah, I'm gonna do some light sanding with the sanding sponges, and then I'm gonna turn in for the day. So we'll get that done, and we'll see it throughout the week when we cut dados. So I haven't touched anything in a few days because the weather has been pretty bad lately outside, but the main goal is it is supposed to rain tomorrow, but it's not going to rain today. So my goal is to assemble all of these racks. I already did one kind of just as an example, but we're going to assemble the rest of the racks. And once they're all assembled, we're just going to be assembling them here on the floor in the garage. And then once they're all assembled, we'll probably start piling them up against the fish tanks or so. I got to move all of that, probably just over here and block all my workbench stuff. Again, this is really messy because we're just playing Tetris. But I got to move everything off of the garage door so I can get the racks that are going to be here in the center of the room out of the garage. And then once they're in the driveway, I'm going to use what's left of the sunshine today before it rains tomorrow. And I'm gonna spray them down with polyacrylic once they're all, assembled. And then once they're sprayed down with polyacrylic, we'll decide if we need to do a second coat or not. But if we don't need to do a second coat, or after the second coat if needed, we'll pull them back into the garage, and then we will start putting down the little anti-fatigue mats that we did on the last one, where the tank is gonna sit on. We'll start cutting those to size and gluing them down. And yeah, it's coming together. Honestly, cutting out the wood was the hardest part. Now that it's all cut to size, it's really just playing Legos here. Unfortunately, it's still bending over on the floor, but it's really just playing Legos, putting everything together where it needs to be. And yeah, it's kind of downhill from here. Still a lot of work left to do, but for the most part, it's kind of downhill. So let's go ahead and start putting the racks together. We're probably just gonna start with the 3-foot racks, just because those are simpler and smaller and easier to get out of the way. It'll clear some of this wood, and then we can pile those racks up against the fish tanks there, and then we'll do the 4-footers in the middle. So let's go ahead and get started. Alrighty, so it's coming along really well. I'm doing the exact same method as we did on these stands, with the exception of there is no middle brace. Kind of like how there's 2 boards, a middle brace on each one of these for these 2-foot tanks. So that way each tank kind of sits on its own little board. I'm not doing that with this one because there's just going to be one tank that runs all the way across it. And the only part, like I've said many times, that the tank is going to be sitting on is about a 1/2 inch all the way around the outside edge. If you look at the bottom side of a fish tank, it's not flat. It has a rim all the way around the outside edge, and then it comes up about 1/2 inch, and then it gets to the glass. So all the weight is on that rim, so we don't need to have a middle support just because nothing's going to be sitting on it. It's just a waste of material. So leaving it completely open like this and building the second one right now. I've only attached the first support. Before you have supports, they are very wobbly because it's 2 independent pieces that you're essentially putting together with these middle sections. So I got this first one together. You're probably wondering why I'm using wood clamps. And the reason for that is if I put one clamp right here in between where these 2 pieces meet, for the most part, it's going to make sure that it stays flush. I'm not gonna have like this board pop up like 1/2 inch or anything like that. So the clamp is, because these 2 pieces are the same height, the clamp is making sure that these stay flush, so that way the tank is flush when it sits on it. And then the pieces that are on the side right here are making sure that the horizontal piece is as close to the vertical piece as possible, basically eliminating any form of movement in the wood. Because if I didn't have the clamps there and I was just screwing these in, as soon as I screw this board in, that side's gonna get all kinds of crazy wampus. It's gonna duck, it's gonna come up a little bit, it's gonna pop off that wood side over there. So the clamps are just there as like a reinsurance to make sure I'm putting it where I want to put it. And also holding it steady so that way I can, you know, screw the screws in. But yeah, I'm gonna finish these last 5 horizontal middle sections. I always start with the middle just because, you know, that's the even point in the wood. So that way the 2 pieces can be evenly put together. And then I usually go to the top and followed by the bottom. So that's the order that I do it in. That's the way I find it to be the most effective. Do it however you want, but yeah, we will finish this one. And then we will start working on our 4-foot tanks, which is going to be the same way we did these, where it's like 2 sections together in one, basically using that board as the horizontal. So it'll be 2 4-foot tanks all together in one section, while this is a standalone 3-foot structure. I'm gonna have essentially a little over an 8-foot structure, but it'll be 2 4-foot tanks. So yeah, we'll finish this one and then we'll get to that one. And once they're assembled, it's time to spray some polyacrylic, because we're not going to be painting it on this time. We're going to be spraying it on. We're going to see how effective that is. So can't wait to get to that point. Quick little rotation with the room. Got the stands pushed up on that wall because I'm running out of space going this way. Again, I got to move all of this over to this side of the garage and basically block all access to this stuff. So instead of assembling our verticals going this way and horizontals going this way, we're just gonna 1/8 or a 90-degree turn it, and we're gonna assemble it the other way because it's going to be longer this way than it is tall. So we have more working room this way. Let's go ahead and start assembling the 4-foot sections. Well, I guess technically it's an 8-foot section, a little over an 8-foot section, but you know what I mean. Let's go ahead and start assembling it. And there she is. That is a 1 8-foot rack. another 8-foot rack right behind me, and then over here are our 2 3-foot racks. So it's getting kind of late today to move all of that stuff off the garage door and then get these out in order to polyacrylic them. Because if we polyacrylic them, that's probably going to take about 2 or 3 hours before we can at least touch them again. And at that point, it's going to be way too late. Like, we could do it now, but by the time they're done and dry, and it's going to be like midnight, and yeah, I'm not about that. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to call it a night here. Might just give a light sanding for any little pieces of wood that popped up as I was screwing things in, little splinters and whatnot. I might give it a very, very, very light sanding. I was actually thinking that I was missing a step, because I remember on those racks, after we finished assembling, I did something else before I put on the poly, and then I remembered, oh wait, that was the sanding that I did before, but we already took care of all that sanding before we even assembled and cut these pieces. So they are completely smooth. I'm not getting any splinters. It's nice. I'm really glad we took the time to do that beforehand, because it's much easier to do it. See right there, when I screwed it in, little piece of wood came up. So I'm gonna quickly sand that down. But anyways, all the splinters that it otherwise would have had are completely gone, because we spent that time at the beginning sanding all the board pieces, and it's much easier to sand them when they're all apart rather than together, because then I'd have to get the sander and go through all these nooks and crannies and curves and corners, and that's not fun for anyone. So happy we did that part beforehand. So yeah, I'm just gonna give it a light sanding, call it a night, and then tomorrow morning we will polyacrylic them and outside and let them dry, because it's not supposed to rain until the afternoon. So we should have enough time to get that done, and then bring them all back inside and start doing the foam. And then once the foam is on, we can start putting them where they're going to be. I still need to get a hold of the bricks that they're going to sit on, those little bricks over there. I need to go buy some bricks, but yeah, it's coming together. We're almost at the point where we can put tanks on. I come to realize that we have a lot of extra tanks. We got the 55, the 60, 340 is a 29, a 20, a 10 in there, another 5 in there. Got a 5 right there. We have all these tanks, but the ones that I'm designing these racks around, technically I only have 3 of the 10 tanks that are needed. So we got to buy some more tanks. We got to downsize. We got to get rid of some of the awkward size tanks, but yeah, that'll be after we get these racks assembled. Let's focus on the racks first. So yeah, I'm going to call it a night. I will see you guys tomorrow for the polyacrylic. Well, that sucked. You probably can't tell, but it started raining suddenly. It was not forecasted to rain at all today, which is why we started doing the stands. You can kind of see the outlines of the stands. As soon as I saw it start raining while the second coat of polyacrylic was drying, I quickly ran out here. The adrenaline was pumping. I lifted these stands by myself, and I got them in the garage. Wiped them all off to get as much water off as I could. Still a little bit of drops here and there, but I wiped them all down. Hopefully the polyacrylic had enough time to dry, but I don't know. Once they dry a little bit more from the water, we will pat them down and see if the polyacrylic did anything, see if we can feel any of the polyacrylic. But we might have to just end up painting these things with a brush and polyacrylic itself instead of spraying it down, because that didn't work all too well. And I went through 4 cans of polyacrylic real fast. I got 1 good coat, and then like maybe a quarter to half of a second coat when you're supposed to get 3. But then again, I'm not really using the polyacrylic to its fullest extent. We're just simply trying to get a little bit of it on this wood, so that way it is just a little bit poly or waterproof. We are not doing polyacrylic the way you're supposed to on like a project where you're supposed to get like a nice medium to thick layer of it on there. We're simply just looking for enough to waterproof the wood. just in case if we spill a little bit of water while we're doing like water changes or getting fish in and out of the tank, things like that. Just a little bit of drippage. But yeah, that was a scary situation when it just suddenly started raining. So we will see how they feel probably later tonight or tomorrow, and then we'll go from there if we want to just set it up the way it is, or if we want to try to poly it again. But yeah, we'll check back in a little bit. Hopefully it doesn't rain anymore, because it was not supposed to rain today. So I thought about it for a couple days, and I am just going to send it the way it is. I want to put another coat of polyacrylic or polyurethane on these things, and actually bought another coat, or another can rather, of polyurethane. We sprayed polyacrylic, but this is polyurethane. It has 3 times more protection. Unfortunately not in a spray can, but this right here is going to be for our flat parts, where we're going to be putting a piece of plywood. So we're going to coat the plywood so that way it's pretty water resistant, almost waterproof in a way, because not every single slot is going to have tanks. The entire left side, when we look at it, like, let me put it down. When we look at it from this way, these 2 sides, this whole side will have tanks. This side will have the 75 gallons on the bottom, but these 2 parts in the middle on this rack are going to have plywood sheets. This is going to be our small tanks, axolotl tubs, whatever we want to do in this area, basically free working space. And then the top parts are going to be plywood as well, because that's where we're going to be setting up our blackworm cultures. I also might take off these middle parts, these 4-inch middle parts up top right in the middle, because I think they are going to get in the way of having an extra blackworm culture. So I might just take a hand saw essentially and cut those off. It's going to take a little bit longer. I wish I would have thought about that before I screwed it all together, but it is what it is. We can still get them off and sand them down and whatnot. But anyways, in terms of putting on another coat, we're just going to leave it the way it is, and we're going to start assembling this whole thing. We got to get these 3-foots on the other side of the garage, because they're going to be up against the door. We're going to need to pull them back from the door a little bit. We're going to need to make sure that the tank, sorry, this is 12 inches above this rack where the tank is going to sit, and a tank is 16. So we need to make sure we go 4 inches above, and just like we did with that one, we're going to be putting light posts probably another foot above that. So we need to make sure that all of that clearance clears the garage door when I do end up opening the garage door eventually, because I don't want to build it all, open up the garage door, and then crack a tank or something like that. So we need to do some tests with that, but essentially we're just going to be getting these in place for now. We're not going to set them up on the bricks or anything like that. We're just going to get them in their general location. And then the next step is to get our foam fatigue mats out, and we're going to cut strips to that size, and we're going to start gluing those strips onto where the tanks are going to be sitting. So that's the next step. And then after we're done with the foam, honestly, we can do a number of things. We can start shimming, we can start the PVC airline, we can start the lights. Those are all relatively small but tedious projects, but yeah, the foam is the next step. Moving it around, and then the foam is the next step. And then after that, we're getting close to finishing. This is gonna be good. So let's start playing some Tetris and get these things where they need to be. Okay, so this is 5 feet from the face of this wall to the face of this wall. I don't have these exactly where I want them. I mean, they're in the general location and in the orientation I want them in, but I have them loosely put together. I only plan to have about a 2-inch gap between these, but right now it's more like a 5 or 6 or 7-inch gap, just to give me some working room, because I still need to work on them. Like I said, I still need to add the foam, possibly play with the lightings and stuff before I put them all together. But once they are together, I am going to be screwing them together here to attach them long ways, while also taking These offcuts that we have right here, these 8-inch offcuts, like I said, I want to have a 2-inch gap, so I'm going to have 3 inches on each side and a 2-inch gap in the middle, so that way I can screw them together horizontally as well in multiple different locations. So that way this all becomes one solid unit. And the reason why I want a gap here is for cables, so that way I can have cables running, because just like our other racks, the power bars are in the top middle part, just because that's adequate room for stuff to go from the top of the tank up, middle rack, and then from the top tank up and over and then down. So that's like a centralized location. I'm going to be doing that the same way here, where the power bars are going to be mounted up here, up and out of the way. But in order to get power and airline tubes and all that stuff to the bottom tanks, the center and whatnot, I need to have some kind of space in the middle. So we're going to have a 2-inch gap just for wires and airline tubes. I'm still playing with how much room I want to have between the walls. Like I said, this is 5 feet at the moment, just as a visual. And although it looks like a lot, and then also trying to have enough garage space, it looks like this is taking about half of my garage. Of course, just a tiny bit extra. But I mean, that's fine. We're basically just turning the entire garage into a fish room at this point. Our other hobby of woodworking will have to either be just an outside thing, or we'll build a shed on the property later or something like that. But anyways, if we are turning this into a fish store, I want to make sure that this is an adequate amount of walking room, as well as being able to roll our barrel of water up and down the aisle and stuff like that. And this is a pretty comfortable amount of room. I like this. Enough room for you to bend over and get to the bottom racks and stuff like that. So I might actually keep it like this. I am wasting a lot of garage space by putting it like this, but it's fine. I'd rather waste an extra foot of garage space than be miserable with my tank maintenance. And if I do have people in here, strangers and whatnot, basically shopping, looking at all the fish and stuff, I want them to be comfortable too. So having an adequate amount of walking room, enough for 2 people to comfortably go in and out of this aisle, I think that's what I want. So now that these are roughly in the place that I want them, I'm gonna start cutting foam, and we are going to start putting the liquid nail foam on these and start getting them set up, because that stand over there that's currently holding our black worms, that's gonna go up top once we get that set up. And that needs to get out of the way because that's now blocking fish tanks. And yeah, once the foam is on there and we get everything set up, we can start, I mean, it's buried now, but all of our spare tanks behind all this junk, the tanks can start going up. We can start putting stuff on the storage rack, start getting room in here, because this is a mess. But this is pretty clean right now. But yeah, without further ado, let's jump into cutting some foam and let's get that part of this done. Let's keep progressing with this project. I severely underestimated how much foam I would need. I used the rest of what I had, minus some little scrap bits. I have this sheet left. This is not very big. It's maybe 1.5 feet by like 10.5 inches, but I have a plan for this somewhere else. I could cut it with the grooves going the other direction to what these ones are going. I have all the cuts going basically straight, so I could utilize this sheet going horizontal, but I know it doesn't matter at all, but I can use this sheet for something else. Specifically, if we need to get a second air pump going, which we have a spare air pump, but this whole contraption is going to take something like 40 air drops or so. So I might want to get a second air pump out, and I might use this to pad the noise of that air pump. But anyways, we were able to get all of our 49.5-inch pieces. We needed 12 of them. So we got all 12 of those cut. And then these are 15.5-inch pieces. These are what are gonna go smack dab in the middle right there. We only got 10 of these. We need 30. So I need 20 more 15.5-inch pieces. And then I didn't even start on the 3-foot pieces. The 3-foot pieces, I need 12 37-inch pieces. So not only do I need 20 more of these, I also need 12 37-inch pieces. So I'm gonna need to go back to the store and I'm gonna need to buy some more of this mat to chop up. I will have to measure out on the computer or something what the minimum amount of mat I will need in order to make these cuts will take. So we got to stop here, we got to go to the store, we got to resupply. But once we finish cutting them all out, it's just a matter of gluing. Like I said, I don't use wood glue or anything like that. What I did on the last tank is I used liquid nails, which is in a caulk gun. So I'll caulk gun a bead all the way across the wood, spread it with a popsicle stick or something along those lines to get it a little flat. And then I'll just lay that on top and press it in and let it sit for a couple hours to a day. Pretty easy stuff. I haven't had a single one of them rip off. I even kind of tried to tug on one on the last tank and it didn't rip off at all. So I really like the liquid nails method. We're going to do that again this time around, but we gotta go get some more foam. So I might go tonight. It's getting a little late, or I might just go tomorrow morning and finish this tomorrow morning, but we'll see what happens. So we have our supply list. We have our 12 37-inch pieces. We have our 12 49.5-inch pieces. And we have our 30 15.5-inch pieces. So that's enough to cover every single railing on all of these stands, with the exception of the top railings, because we're gonna be putting MDF up there, and that's gonna be blackworm cultures. And then this side is getting foamed. That side is not going to get foamed. That side is also going to be MDF, because this is where our 60-gallon breeders are going to be for our fry system and our like assorted guppies, our cold fish and whatnot. Maybe a overflow if we have too many in one tank. Our 60-gallon breeders, that's what these are going to be for. Mostly just the fry system though. And then that side is going to house any kind of animals that we can put in tubs, such as like axolotl babies or axolotl grow outs. We might have a couple of small tanks over there for like hatching out eggs before we get them into the fry system, things like that. But this is all the foam that we're going to need, so we can start putting the liquid nails and start actually attaching this to where it's going to go. So let's jump on that. And we have a couple spare pieces, which I don't know what we're going to do with all those spares yet, but it's always nice to have some spare foam, some spare mats lying around the house. So I have one idea of what I could do with one piece, but I don't know about the rest, but we'll hang on to it. So we got a decent amount of work done today. Unfortunately, all of my recordings of what we've done with it are no longer good. So this is just to summarize our day today. So we got these up on bricks. This is exactly where we're gonna put it. We went ahead and we did the connectors and screwed all the pieces together. So this entire thing is now one ensemble. It all moves together. It weighs a ton, but this is all now one solid piece up on bricks, exactly where we want it. We are now, we cut these boards off, measured them to size, because these boards are gonna go right here. And I have a bigger board drying over there, as you can see, which is gonna go up top. So all the boards are currently drying with their coat of polyurethane to make them a little water resistant, not necessarily waterproof, but water resistant. And I'm gonna go ahead and they're almost dry. So here in like another hour or so, I'm gonna screw the boards on right here and up top. The ones up top are just a 1/2 inch board, and the ones that are gonna be down here are this 3/4 of an inch thick board, because this is where the weight is gonna be. If I wanna have tanks or something on this area, I want just a little bit more sturdy wood. Up here is just gonna all be blackworm cultures. Those tubs, there's gonna be 5 of them up here as blackworm cultures. So yeah, honestly, as soon as these are dry, I'm gonna put them in their places where they're gonna go, and then could honestly start putting tanks up. The garage is already a lot cleaner, as you can see. However, all those tanks that are over there and all the tanks that are behind this wood, once I get these up there, we can start putting tanks on. I might paint the tanks first. So other than painting the tanks, we're gonna get the tanks up on the racks, and we're gonna start actually putting this rack together and start cycling tanks. I have the big tanks on order at the moment, so we should get those in about a week or 2. So this is going to be a very long video, but yeah, it's coming together. A lot of work done today. I think the next thing to do is, after I get these up there, I'm gonna be putting up the lights, I'm gonna be putting up the power bars, and then we're gonna be doing a PVC system. I think instead of creating a loop, because this entire rack is probably gonna have somewhere around 40 or 50 airline drops, in addition to the 22 airline drops that already has. I don't know if that one pump is gonna be enough, because I also might have some live food cultures like Daphnia and stuff. Once I get these plants out of here, I might put some like Daphnia cultures and stuff over here, which means I will also need airdrops over here. I might put my second pump, because I have one exactly like that. I might put another pump up right here and just have it run across the top of the garage, maybe a little bit under where the garage door would open. But yeah, I got to think about that one, but it might just be a separate PVC airline system, one for that wall and then the second one for this rack over here. But it's coming together. It's almost there. I'm loving the progress. Maybe a couple more weeks and it'll be done. And the only reason I say a couple more weeks is just to get the tanks. But she's almost there. So we are now like a month, maybe a month and a half in the future now. Unfortunately, I did not record or do anything with this video for about a month's time. because we've been trying to spend our entire Alaska summer outside doing stuff out in the yard, like building a fence, putting in a lawn, building a shed, things like that. So we haven't been doing too much with the fish room, so we kind of hurried up to finish the fish room with where we were at and didn't take as much time to record it, just so we can start cycling in the tanks, getting some species, which we do have a couple new species, which unfortunately there's not going to be an unboxing video, so I'll show you them right now. If you're still here, special treat, you're welcome. But we got all the tanks set up. So this is the actual finished product. We have 3 40-gallon breeders right here, which I still need to put sponge filters in and put some species in there. This is just a black worm tub for easy convenience. It is going to go up there eventually. 2 75-gallon tanks with the backs painted a powder blue color, which is actually really pretty and going to be really nice for growing out fish. That's a storage. This is a 60-gallon tank with 4 discus in. Oh, I scared him. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I didn't mean to scare you guys. Oh. Anyways, we have 4 discus in here, which apparently are very, very frightened at the moment. They've been in here for 2 or 3 weeks, but I must have really scared them. My bad. But those are tiger blue pandas, even though they're not blue, they're more of a red. Very pretty fish. 2 more of the 75-gallon tanks also painted blue. 2 60-gallon breeders also painted blue. These are going to be where the fry system is, so I already have like one thing floating. There's nothing in it, it's just an empty tub. But this is going to be our fry system once we get that finally set up and running. And then another 4 40-gallon breeders, which in this one we have, oh, there's a good one right there. We have snowball plecos. So there's actually one on the other side of that slate too, and one in the cave. We have 4 of these ginormous snowball plecos. These are like 5.5-inch snowball plecos. Really, really cool. But anyways, this is all in preparation for when we have babies. The fry system will come into play, which we still need to build the fry system, but we don't really have too many babies at the moment, no eggs. So fry system to come. The grow out tanks are cycling and ready for when we have a plethora of eggs of either discus or angelfish, so that'll be really cool. And then the black worm tubs need a little bit of maintenance as well before we get those up and running. But we kind of shifted gears and we didn't do too much with the fish room as of late, just because we're trying to take advantage of the summer and get stuff done in the garage. But this is the final product. We have our own centralized airline system right here. So we did go up with a second pump. So there's our first pump. We put a second pump in, which I have 2 lines going to a brine shrimp hatchery, another 5 lines going to my live culture, so live Daphnia and whatever else I want to put there, maybe a medicine hospital tank. And then the rest of it is going 1 all the way across the top, which has a bunch of drops for specifically the blackworm cultures, and then over to the 40-gallon tanks over there. And then we have it coming down here, which gives us 1 drop for our discus tank. I might put in a second drop on the other side right there. And then the air goes down here. And the reason why I have it doing that is because I want to put airline nozzles really close to this 60-gallon breeder tank, so that way I can adjust it for the fry system, depending on what kind of fry is going to go on which tub. So I wanted easily accessible and airline nozzles. But yeah, that is the entire rack completely built. I am very happy with it, and I would highly recommend doing a rack similar to this in your own fish room if you plan to keep a bunch of fish tanks and you want to, you know, stack them 2 or 3 high. So thank you very much for watching. If you've made it this far, this is like an hour-long video. So thank you very, very much for watching. If you've liked what you've seen, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe if you haven't already for more content, and let me know what you think about this fish stand in the comment section below. In the detailed description, I will also be putting some of the dimensions for the lumber if you want to build your own stands like what I have here. And yeah, thank you very much. See you on the next video. Peace.